Hello everybody, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening depending on where you are in this amazing world. My name is Donovan Jolly, and welcome everybody once again for another amazing video of DIY investing. For today's video, we're going to be taking a look at all of the cycles that we've had thus far over the last 10 years of Bitcoin's price action. I wanted to share with you guys how similar the last two cycles are and how they actually compare to the current cycle that we're in today. I've got a really cool chart, a lot of really cool information that I know is going to help solve a lot of your guys' biggest questions, as well as taking a deep dive analysis inside of the price action over the last 10 years. Many people that understand exactly what I'm talking about today, which is a very easy to understand format that I've created, are going to set themselves up to make the most money over the rest of this cycle. We only have a few months left, and for the people that are truly trying to maximize their fullest profit potential, you really need to pay attention to what I'm about to share with you. If you're new and just finding this channel, always remember to do me a favor by leaving a like, comment, and subscribing to this channel for more updates. Always remember to click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these amazing videos like the one provided for you here. And make sure you guys sign up and join the Discord server of over 21,000 members and growing. Links are provided for you in the description for the people that would like to join my community. On top of that, if you're new, just getting into these markets and you want some extra educational content that's going to help you guys to be more profitable, links are provided for you in the description to go ahead and download my free ebook as well. So check all that out. Links are provided for you in the description. And with all that being said, guys, let's jump right into this amazing video today. So quickly before we jump into the video, guys, I wanted to give a quick shout out to TechDev on Twitter at TechDev_52. He's actually the person that originally came up with this chart that I'm going to be sharing with you guys in my own sort of way. And so make sure you guys go follow him. He's got a lot of really cool analysis. And so one of the quick things that I want to talk about before we jump into the video, guys, is quickly just to say thank you so much for the support of this channel. Thank you guys so much for all of the support you give me over the last few years. You know, it's completely changed my life, the ability to have this spotlight, the ability to truly share my knowledge that I've learned inside of the crypto markets. I know exactly what it's like to lose all of your money. I know exactly what it's like to feel like you're going one step forward, two steps back, and you're just sitting there trying so hard to learn, but you don't seem like it's actually making you go anywhere in a positive direction. I've been there, and I know exactly what that's like, and that's ultimately why I made this channel. I wanted to be able to help educate as many people possible in a way that I knew was easy to understand, so that even people that don't necessarily know anything about trading, they don't really know much about technical analysis, they can look at the chart and they're going to be able to understand exactly what I'm talking about. That was always the goal on this channel, was to be able to help you guys, my amazing community and supporters, make life-changing money over the course of this cycle. A lot of you guys already have. A lot of you guys are about to over the next 3 months. And so I just wanted to give you guys a quick shout out. Thank you all so much for the support. And let's get right into this analysis today. Now, here's the thing that we needed to cover for today's video. Now, basically, what we're going to analyze is the last two cycles and comparing the last two cycles to what we're seeing today inside of Bitcoin. And then we're going to kind of summarize some thoughts and perspectives. I'll share with you guys some even deeper analysis. And then you guys will be able to come away with this video with a greater perspective on what we're going to be doing at the end of the year and what we should expect to see as the next 3 months roll on. So first things first, guys, all of these Bitcoin cycles, except for this very first one, which it still did to a certain extent. Remember, guys, the reason why we ignore that first cycle is simply just because there was never a Bitcoin halving, right? Bitcoin halving right here. This was the first one that took place at the very end of 2012. That happens every single 4 years, where the amount of new Bitcoins that are created and added to the supply gets cut in half. And that's also known as the mining reward, right? And so we have these halvings, and this is what causes a massive supply shock inside of the market. The price has to go up significantly for miners to continue to earn a profit. And the whole network relies upon these miners to process the transactions, right? And so this is the first cycle in which we actually had all of the parameters met for a true 4-year cycle. And I'm going to share with you guys all of the cycles up to this point that have had a halving and comparing them to what we see today, because I think it's going to blow your mind just how similar these actually are. Now, if you've been watching this channel, you already know that we've covered this a lot, but I wanted to give you guys a different sort of perspective to cover the same thoughts. because in my opinion, this is going to get even deeper detailed on some of the things that a lot of you guys have had questions with. So let's start off, guys. Every single cycle, you're going to have this major blow off top, and that's what ends the bull market, right? This is the all-time high that we make, and then we start a bear market decline. Now, generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, bear markets generally dip about 80 to 90%. This one dipped quite low, but that was really our first bear market we ever had, and so this was at a time where there wasn't a ton of volume inside of the market, right? So this was the worst bear market we ever had at just under 94%. And once we actually bottomed, once again, if you look down here where we bottomed at was pretty much the 1st of December. The very beginning of the winter timeframes is generally where the markets are going to top and they're going to bottom. And we can see that that took place right here. It was a major pivot point. We bottomed right here at the very end of November. And that's where we get our bear market low. We bottomed at about $2 per Bitcoin. And now, guys, this is generally what's going to happen every single cycle. You're going to have the very beginning stages of the new bull run. This is the very beginning stages of the new uptrend, right? And so this has gone. So I've gone ahead and pinpointed this trend line. And as you guys can see that we have these first little higher highs and higher lows. Now, what's interesting to me is at the end of that accumulation, we also see the very beginning of the first Bitcoin halving. And this is going to be the rule of thumb every cycle. At the end of the accumulation, we have the first Bitcoin halving. And it's going to be the same throughout all of them, even though it's not the first Bitcoin halving. In the case of this, we bottomed at the winter time frame. We accumulated for a year. And then we get our first halving. And this is exactly what ends up taking place right after this is our first major leap into price discovery. This is the supply shock that I'm talking about. Every single Bitcoin halving, the price of Bitcoin skyrockets, right? And nobody really knew that why. Nobody really understood, the technicals of Bitcoin, the fundamentals of Bitcoin, until more recently when people started to realize, hey, this is actually a trend that develops. I remember when I got into the market in 2016, and nobody really knew what to expect with the second Bitcoin halving, but they knew that the first one saw the price immediately skyrocket after. And so this is going to be something that happens every single cycle. And so this is where, at the same time, not only do we leave the 1 year accumulation, the Bitcoin halving takes place, we also break out of the previous all-time high and make a new all-time high, right? And this is our first major leap into price discovery. Markets go very parabolic. And then ultimately we get our first sell-off. Now the reason I call it the first sell-off instead of this one or even this one is simply just because of the market cycle chart. And if we actually come over here and analyze this is the chart that I know that you're familiar with because I've talked about it a lot on this channel. The stealth phase is the very beginning. This is the takeoff. As you guys can see, this little dotted line, this is the average trend line. And we can see that the market's riding that trend line in the stealth phase. That's going to be the equivalent of this. This is the stealth phase. And then once the markets go parabolic, we pretty much just leave that trend line, right? We get close to tagging it, but we don't actually tag it again. We're always trending above that trend line. And we can see that that's pretty much the case here. We're always above that line. And then we get our first sell-off. This is what's known as the bear trap, right? This is when the markets break into new all-time highs. We go into price discovery. And there's pretty much nothing but upside potential, but we always pull back after doing so. And that was this move right here. Now, what's going to be interesting as we get into the further cycles down the line, you guys are going to notice that these cycles are synced up almost to a T. They follow almost the exact same rule of thumb. Now, we get our first top. We make this ABC correction back down, and then we end up bottoming at around the beginning of July. That's our capitulation before we go into the blow off top, right? And right after that first sell-off, we always get one more big euphoric push on the upside. And this is really where the cycle ends. We top and look at the time frame, winter once again. Not only do we bottom in the winter, but we top in the winter as well. And so this is our first cycle, right? This is pretty much how Bitcoin followed its first cycle. And now we're going to come over here and actually analyze the second cycle. And we're going to see the similarities here. Yes, there's never going to be 100% the same cycle every single time, but they're going to rhyme. And with Bitcoin being programmed to follow these 4-year cycles with the Bitcoin halving, it's really interesting just how correlated these are. The price structure may look completely different, but the time frames are always going to stay the same. So once again, guys, after the blow off top, we get our all-time high, and then we start the new bear market, right? We crash, we correct all the way down until we hit our bear market low. This was when Bitcoin went from about $1,150 all the way down to $160. And then we kind of accumulate sideways, and then this is really what starts that new bull trend, right? The accumulation phase happens about right here at the first breakout, because this is the beginning of the new bull run, right? This is where we first start uptrending, higher highs and higher lows. And remember, this begins about the 1st of 2016, and then we see about 1 year exact of this uptrend, just the same as we saw over here, about 1 year, right? The very beginning of 2012 to the end of 2013, and then we went parabolic. So we have about 1 year of us accumulating on this parabolic trend, right? And that's what we see here. The very beginning of 2016, we start uptrending. The end of 2017 is when we start actually leaving the all-time highs and going parabolic. Now, what's interesting to me here is, once again, when we take a time to analyze this Bitcoin halving, this Bitcoin halving pretty much takes place right before we get that move to the all-time highs. This cycle was slightly different. There was a little bit more buy the rumor and sell the news on this day. Bitcoin had its first little correction, the first lower high, we had the halving, and then we got one more big capitulation candle back onto previous support. And that was really what happened after that first halving. The first one pretty much just took off instantly. The second one had one more quick panic before we ended that. Then that's pretty much what takes us into us breaking those all-time highs and going into price discovery, right? In the same way of the last cycle, how we made our first major impulse past those all-time highs, we get our first major correction, right? Now, these were solid corrections, but this is the first sell-off past the all-time highs. It's this move right here. We have the trend line, we break past that trend line into new all-time highs, and then we get our first correction. That's the bull trap. That's the bear trap, right? And so we can see that right here. Break into new all-time highs, correct, that's the bear trap. Now we can see that we distance ourselves from this trend line. We don't come all the way back down to retest this again. We bounced off of this trend line a number of different times as we accumulated up here. But what we see here is, during that first major push past those all-time highs, we get that first sell-off, and we end up pretty much just coming way up. We end up getting that first sell-off, and we always stayed above that previous trend line. Now, what's interesting to me here, guys, is if you're going to notice, at the very bottom of this capitulation, it's going to be taking us to July once again. So in the same way that we have this Bitcoin halving, after the halving, we go parabolic into price discovery, we have that first correction, then we actually get that same capitulation that takes place in July. The same thing happened here. We get that first break past the all-time highs, first major correction, and we bottom around mid-July over here. And that's what takes us to our final blow-off top of that Bitcoin cycle, right? Now, this is pretty much the same sort of thing. It followed the same time frames. Look where we bottomed over here, January. Once again, the winter time frames. Look at where we topped around mid-December. Once again, the winter time frames are big pivot points for both the market bottom and the market top. Now, this, guys, is what takes us into our cycle that we're currently at today. Now, you guys are going to notice something. When we're comparing the first cycle to the second cycle, there's a lot of difference in the actual price structure. Overall, it's very similar still, and it follows the same time frames. But when we take the time to analyze this most recent cycle, I think you guys are going to notice that it actually follows a lot closer to the 2013 one. And that's actually what I think is going to be playing out from here. Now, once again, guys, let's just go through the same parameters that we've been following thus far, and let's analyze. So once again, we get the blow off top, and this takes us to our all-time high. And then we have the bear market, right? Bear market goes, once again, where do we top? December, the winter time frames. Once again, where do we bottom? December, the winter time frames. Pivot points are going to be in the winter for both cycle tops and cycle bottoms. This is where we get our bear market low. Now, after our cycle low is where we begin the new bull run, right? This new uptrend. Now, you guys are going to notice something. There is an outlier in this most recent cycle. This right here is some major deviation from this trend. We can see that we were uptrending throughout here. We retested it here. And then after this deviation that took place in March of 2020, we literally just continued to ride on that same trend line like nothing had even happened. The reason why I believe that we got this capitulation and we sold through this trend line is simply just because of a black swan event being the coronavirus. We knew that when that took place, that was something we can't predict. It was something that caught all of the markets off guard, and Bitcoin being more of a risk-on asset, especially back in these days, it saw one of the bigger corrections inside of that move. But what's interesting to me is how quickly that dip was immediately bought up. We went from the capitulation taking place on about the 13th of March, and I think it was the 12th or 13th of March, and then over the course of a week, we went straight back to that trend line as if nothing had even happened, right? And so this is simply what's known as deviation. I don't believe that this would have been the same sort of correction if we didn't have all of that panic that took place inside of March. But nonetheless, when we look at all of the rest of the price action, we're literally just riding right off of this trend line. No different than what we saw in the last cycles, right? The only comparison that you could really make is probably right here where we get a wick below. Even right here, we got a couple wicks below. If you were able to actually zoom in and look at most of the charts on exchanges, there were certain periods of time where we did get some deviation, but this was a much greater deviation because it happened on a lot bigger of a scale, right? These were all of the global markets tanking, and so that's why I believe that we get this deviation. But when we really just take the time to analyze, we went directly back to that same trend line, and so nothing really changed. This was just a great buying opportunity that hardly ever happens in Bitcoin cycles. And so we can see that once again, same rule of thumb. We pretty much just begin the same exact sort of trend. This is the very beginning of the new uptrend. Higher highs, higher lows. Instead of making a couple impulses, we just made one big one. And then we just pretty much accumulated sideways on this new trend line, right? And so this is what takes us into the Bitcoin halving, right? Every single cycle, we have the new Bitcoin halving. The Bitcoin halving in 2020 took place around May. And this was right before the markets went into price discovery. This reminds me so much of that 2013 cycle where we get the Bitcoin halving and then shortly after we get that major break past the all-time highs. And when we look at this, it looks more like that 2013 cycle than it does to the one that we saw in 2017. The 2017 one, it wasn't quite as parabolic, it didn't go quite as high, and it wasn't really quite as big. But we saw the opposite effect in both 2013 and the recent cycle that we're in right now. We see a big lift past those all-time highs, and then we get our first sell-off, right? We get that major correction. Now, this is what's really interesting, guys. This happens both cycles. We get the July low that takes place after that first sell-off into new all-time highs. We get the July low, and that's what takes us into that blow-off top. We saw the same thing here. Break past the all-time highs, first sell-off, and then we get capitulation taking place in July, that same July low. And that's what takes us to the final blow-off top of that cycle. We are seeing the exact same things playing out in this cycle. There's almost no major difference for the most part. The big difference is the cycles have differed to some extent, being in 2017, we saw about a year worth of just sideways consolidation that took place here, whereas Bitcoin in this cycle pretty much went like this and then took off and then did something like this until we ended up breaking out. So the cycle was completely different from this accumulation, but the time frame stayed about the exact same. We get the same impulse into new all-time highs. We capitulate after that first sell-off in July. The same thing happened in all of these cycles. And so that's the big thing I want you guys to understand here, is no two cycles are going to be 100% the exact same. The price structure is going to vary. There's so many different variables that play into what makes price move. And so the overall price action is going to be vastly different, but when you take the time to analyze the time frames kind of put the whole picture together for us. We can see so many similarities based off of the time frames. The price action, can go a million different ways, but they always pivot at the same time frames. And so that's the big thing that you guys need to understand here. And what we've seen up to this point, what did we see in 2013 in the first cycle after the July low? We saw a massive rally into new all-time highs. We capitulated at $64 and we peaked at $1,150. That's what took us to the final blow-off top of that cycle. What happened in 2017? We get this big run up, we get this first sell-off, and then we go capitulate in July. Once again, the same July time frame. We bottom here at around $1,800, and we ended the year up here at $20,000. And so this is a big move that ends up taking place after our July low, after this first major sell-off in the market. Because remember, what we're following is this here. We have this mean trend line. We break all-time highs. We go into price discovery, and then we get that first sell-off, right? We revert close to the mean trend line, but we're always above it because this is when the markets start to go really parabolic. We don't actually come back down to ride the trend line that began the bull market. We saw this here. We started uptrending on this new trend line. We broke past the all-time highs, And when we corrected and capitulated in July, we never came back down to retest those all-time highs, and we went straight into another major impulse, which deviated even further from that trend. And so the same thing can be said in 2017. We start this uptrend, higher highs, higher lows. We make the first breakout past those all-time highs. We capitulate in July, and capitulation once again stays well above that previous trend line that pretty much began the bull market. And this is what takes us to that final blow off top. The same things can be said in this current cycle here. If we draw the trend line, it gets close, but it never actually retests that trend line here. This is the trend line that begins the bull market, higher highs, higher lows, all the way through. Eventually, we break past the all-time highs, go into price discovery, first sell-off, and then we capitulate in July. Once again, the July low is well above and beyond that previous trend line, and this is ultimately what is going to take us into price discovery. The same thing that shows us here on this chart. Cycles are going to be universal principles. The reason why I've invested so much time, so much money, and effort into understanding market cycles is because I believe market cycles are the most valuable part of any type of investing strategy. Now, when it comes to stock markets, you can find these exact same emotional market cycles repeated on any sort of market. It does not matter what it is. You can even see this playing out in the Dow Jones, even though it's a much greater time scale. That plays off of 100-year cycles, whereas cryptos are just 4-year cycles. And you guys can see other sort of cycles like uranium. They follow these exact same charts. You guys are going to be able to find these cycles and be able to make a lot of money trading them if you know exactly what to look for. And this is why I like to focus so much time, so much energy on sharing with you guys how to understand these cycles, is because this is what matters most in my opinion. I've made more money trading cycles in an easier to understand way. I don't have to sit at my laptop all day long trading, analyzing each and every price swing, messing with the leverage, messing with all of this stuff, because that to me is creating a new job in its place. I got into crypto, I got into investing so that I could pretty much just put my money into a market, analyze it here and there, and be able to earn passively and really just not have to worry so much about spending so much effort in it. Maybe I had a new idea that I wanted to go at. Maybe I had a job. Maybe I had kids to take care of. Whatever it is, cycles are going to be the most valuable aspect for you because you can simply sit on your hands and just put your money in the market and let it work for you. And that's what we're going to see repeated on every single major cycle, guys. This is taking place every single market cycle. And this is why I've been so adamant about teaching you guys that what we're gearing up for is going to be the major blow off top in this cycle, is simply because this is what we've seen every single cycle up to this point. This is the exact same rule of thumb that we continue to follow. The same exact calculations can be said here. And I believe that we're actually following very closely to what we're seeing in 2013. That's what I believe is going to be taking place, something along the lines of this. And when we zoom in here to what we saw in 2013, we saw a very similar capitulation, right? Keep in mind, it's going to be different because what's taking place now on Bitcoin is happening on a bigger time frame than what we saw back here in the earlier cycles in 2013. But we can see we capitulated. We make our first run up, and then we get this quick stab back down to retest support. This is a fake out before we go parabolic. I believe that that's exactly what we're seeing today, right here inside of this little sell-off that we saw over the last 24 hours. We're seeing roughly the exact same thing playing out, where we capitulated a low, we rally up into resistance. Now we're selling off to retest the previous resistance as support, and I do believe that this dip is going to get bought up. We might go to 3,800, we could go to 3,700. This could overextend a few $1,000s, but it doesn't change the fact that where we're getting up for is going to be the end of the cycle and the blow off top, where things just go pure parabolic. It's the maximum euphoria inside of a market cycle. It's this move right here. Media attention, enthusiasm, public greed, delusion, new paradigm, right? Look at the trend line. We revert off of this trend line significantly, and this is what takes place every single cycle. We can analyze this in all of these charts. We already distance ourselves from the trend line in this move, right? We capitulate, we get the July low, it's still above this trend line. Then we go into a brand new impulse that takes us even further away from that trend line. We're significantly above that trend line by the time of the blow off top. And the same thing can be said over here. If we draw this same trend line, we can see that Bitcoin, we get the July low, we're still above that trend line, Price discovery takes off. We go for another new parabolic run, and this thing is way too far extended above that trend line for this to even make any sort of sense, right? And so we're going to see the same thing again, guys. 100% we're going to see the same thing. We're going to see a massive impulse into new all-time highs. Another big one, even bigger than the one that we just saw. It might look smaller on the log scale like I have it right now, but it's going to look so parabolic, guys, just straight up. We see the little pullbacks along the way here, but it's going to look a lot like this with probably even smaller pullbacks would be my guess. Just once again, very parabolic type of price action. And one of the charts I often like to analyze is simply just gold, right? We like to look at the gold fractal because the gold fractal is really the one that's the most correlated to Bitcoin, in my opinion. And this is the same sort of thing that we saw over here, right? Keep in mind, we get this little sell-off, we retest the all-time highs. This is on a monthly time frame, so it's going to look different. But this is ultimately what we ended up seeing. And when we go to a log scale, wave 3 looks big, wave 5 looks pretty big too. But it doesn't look quite the same when we look at on the log scale, right? It looks a lot bigger when we take it off. It makes it look like this wave was just tiny. And that's going to be the same case once again right here. When we take this off of the log chart, this wave's just going to go so parabolic, it's going to make no sense. And so guys, this is the video I had for you. I wanted to just give you guys this as a way to deeper explain the cycles, deeper analyze how similar these cycles have been up to this point, and really just give you guys a lot of confidence to continue to either buy the dip or hold on. If you guys have cash, I believe that this sell-off is an amazing opportunity to get back into the market, get back into new positions. You don't need to sell anything. You don't need to worry about the market crashing and going into another new low, because when we really just take the time to analyze what has happened over the last 10 years of Bitcoin, this is once again no different than anything that we've seen up to this point. The cycles will have some differences in price action, yes, but when it comes to analyzing the time frames, they're the same. Where do we bottom over here? December. Once again, where do we top over here? December. Where do we top? December. Where do we bottom? January. Once again, the winter time frames. Same thing over here. Where do we bottom? Pretty much the beginning of December. Winter time frames. Where do we top? December. Winter time frames. What are we getting ready for at the end of the year? What takes place in the next 3 months? Well, the end of the year, winter time frames, right over here. A little bit, this actually is a little bit shorter. I would draw it over, but it's going to make this chart look wacky. So I'm just going to leave it here. I can't really, oh, I had it. So you guys get the idea. The winter time frame is coming up at the end of the year. We know historically this is a major turning point in the market. We've got a lot of room to make up for this blow off top to take place. But once again, guys, blow off tops take the shortest amount of time and happen to be the biggest price swings that we see inside of the market. So guys, ignore the FUD. Focus on the big picture. This is nothing new. This is an opportunity to make more money. Hold on, because I promise you guys at the end of the year, if you're willing to hold through this and you're willing to take profits at the end of the year, you're going to set yourselves up far better than anybody else inside of the market. The long-term holders always succeed. They always make the biggest gains. Yes, you can be an excellent day trader, but if you're constantly in and out of the market, chances are you're not going to make as much money as the person that buys Solana at the very bottom or buys any of these altcoins at their cycle lows, because they go up so much in value that it's so hard to outperform that by trading. And you're better off just not, because not only are you going to be risking more by trying to be a day trader, but you're leaving so much on the table if you're wrong by doing that. And so for me, I like to buy, I like to hold, I like to take my profits at the end of the year. And you guys that stick to that same plan, in my opinion, are ultimately going to make a lot of money in the process. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you found value in this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these amazing videos. Once again, download my free ebook. Links are in the description. You guys can also sign up for my Discord server. One final thought, guys, is at the end of the month, I'm once again closing off the big discount on my course Signals and Beginner Course Bundle. If you guys want to get all of my products for a really low rate before we close out the end of the cycle, most importantly, you guys want to join my Discord server, see what trades I'm taking over the next 3 months, see what I'm actually going to be doing with my profit, when I'm selling based off of what time frames. And another big thing is where I'm diversifying that profit into stocks, commodities, and things like that. If you guys want to learn about that, there's going to be a whole lot of information to be learned inside of the bear market, brand new markets to jump into. And so while everybody's panic selling into the bear market because they weren't able to sell the cycle top, we're going to be compounding our gains in other markets and new opportunities, waiting for the bottom of the next bear market. So thank you guys so much for watching. Check it out. Links are provided for you in the description. And with all that being said, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.